Hey, Steve, can I tell you something else?
Yes,
Steve?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, on another instance, now that I know Tony Roma's is open again, I'm working on that again. And those tickets you bought, will you please tell the people to whom you give them that the time for them has been extended through October the 30th,
Okay.
and that carry out, take out, curbside is available.
Okay. Okay. Well, on the tickets, they say starting June 1st, and I'm sure they'll be pretty back.
Still starting June 1st.
Yeah.
But the time for them has been extended a month.
Okay.
So,
great.
and curbside is available.
Okay. Perfect.
Thank you.
Jay.
Yes.
Excuse me, Dr. Gonzalez.
Jay,
Hey, so when is the last day of school?
the 28th of May.
Okay. Is that the same for Sherryland? It is, right?
I'm not sure about Sherryland. I know that we had originally planned for the 29th, but we used a weather day, so we backed it up to the 28th. So Sherryland may be on the 29th. I'm not sure though.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, good. Our participants are growing. So.
Awesome.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. It is 10 o'clock, and thank you for joining another McAllen Talks. We have Dr. Jay Gonzalez with us, with the Superintendent of the McAllen ISD school system. I'm going to have Sally Guetta, our board chairman, do a quick welcome, and then I'll introduce Jay.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you for participating in this weekly series that we're having. And we look forward to hearing Dr. Gonzalez speak. And also I want to say that he's also one of our board of directors at the McAllen Chamber of Commerce. Thank you and welcome. Jay, Dr. Gonzalez.
Thank you.
Jay, thanks. Definitely, obviously a new and unprecedented time for public education in Texas and higher education in Texas, as you think through it. Jay's been with the school for almost your entire career. And so he brings a great depth of knowledge and understanding about how the system works. He's been innovative and also very focused in on customer service and how to attract and bring more students into the McAllen ISD school system. And so obviously with the COVID-19, we've got some new challenges, things that we had not experienced or expected, and how we move forward. It's going to really rely on his leadership and obviously the school board's leadership. I see where Sam's joined us also. But this is an important moment, not only for the school district, but for our community. And obviously, and I've said this throughout my career, the school district is one of those foundational elements that makes a community a success or failure. So McAllen ISD's success is part of the community's success. And so Jay, we're glad that you're here. We're glad that you took time out of your schedule to do this. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Yes, sir, Steve. I appreciate you. I want to thank you as a president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce for McAllen. Everything that you do for us and the business community is greatly appreciated. Been a great friend and a great supporter, and can't say thank you enough, Steve. Also, Sally, as president, thank you for everything you do for the chamber, not only the chamber, for the entire community. Appreciate all the energy that you put into making our city a great place. I also wanted to thank Sam Saldivar Jr., our board vice president, for being here with us on the Zoom today, along with all the other business leaders. To Steve's point, the education system in every community is the pillar. And I have been with McAllen ISD going for 23 years now. I started out in the classroom. I was a science teacher. I've been an assistant principal in the district. I did that for 5 years at the middle school and high school levels, Lincoln at the time, and McA. I was a principal of the alternative education program over at the Instruction and Guidance Center, principal at Cathy Middle School for 6 years. I was also the associate superintendent for instructional leadership. So I had the opportunity to work with all 33 campuses at the time and all the campus leadership. And that was a blessing. And here I am wrapping up my 4th year as superintendent of schools. And it's been a true blessing for me. It's been a blessing for my family. And I'm just very fortunate to be part of a great team in McAllen ISD and part of a great city, a very supportive school board, high thinking, high level school board that allows us to flourish as a school district. When you look at the accountability system in Texas, it's very stringent. McAllen ISD, I'm proud to say, has earned, and I emphasize earned, an A in the state accountability system. That's not easy to do with a student population of over 20,000. When you look at the size of our district, when you look at the challenges that we have with 72% of our families being economically disadvantaged, McAllen ISD is an A-rated school district for 2 years in a row. We also earned the post-secondary readiness distinction, which looks at a lot of variables with regard to graduation rates and dropout rates and career technology education pathways and performance on the SAT and ACT. Not only performance, but how many students we have participating. We have a lot of choice in our district. So to earn the A and the post-secondary readiness are something that we're very proud of. On top of that, we've earned the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas perfect score. That's the accountability system on the financials. Perfect score for 8 years in a row. So we're very, very proud of that. And just to kind of put that in context, if you look at school districts in the state of Texas that have over 20,000 students with regard to enrollment, 20,000 or more, there's only 3 school districts in this entire great state of Texas that earn the A, the post-secondary readiness, and the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. So we're very proud of that. And that takes a lot of hard work. It doesn't happen by accident. That takes a lot of synergy amongst the entire organization, and not only the organization, but with the community. It takes a commitment to continuous improvement and self-evaluation across the system. And when you talk about systems and processes, especially in a COVID-19 environment, I think any system is tested best when tested under pressure. And if you look at the last 5 weeks for us in the COVID-19 environment, the systems and processes and the foundation that we've had in place on the financial side, on the academic side, on the technology side, put us in a pathway to flourish in this environment, where from one day to the next, we went from a traditional setting into a virtual setting. We went from a face-to-face learning, the way we went to school, to a distance learning environment. I want to commend our teachers and our principals, our entire staff, for making sure that we were able to make that transition. I want to thank our parents for doing all that they've done to ensure that they're following through with the game plan and ensuring that their children continue to receive and earn a quality education. So I think that and I know that there is a much more of an understanding of what the art of teaching and learning really is all about, and a great respect for the work that teachers do now that parents are having to educate their children at home at a high frequency in an environment where we're continuing to push forward. Also, I want to commend our food service department Ever since this broke back in March with regard to COVID-19, McAllen ISD quickly maneuvered into a feeding program that continued to feed approximately 12,000 meals a day. So when you look at 12,000 meals a day, that's a lot of families that are continuing to benefit from our nutrition program. So I want to commend the food service program. I want to commend the transportation program. I want to commend our police department, our facilities maintenance and operation department for continuing to flourish in this environment. So these individuals have continued to, from an essential standpoint, grind and work on a day-to-day. Our teachers, if you look back to the work, they gave up their spring break to develop game plans. Now, one of the things that we're very fortunate about is we're a one-to-one district. If you look at our students at the elementary level, they all have iPads. And if you look at our students 6th through 12th grade, they all have Chromebooks. And what we were able to do is utilize the Google Classroom, utilize virtual platforms to ensure that we continue to communicate. And not only that, if you look at what the Commissioner of Education, Mike Morath, was asking, is that if you're going to get ADA, average daily attendance, the weighted average daily attendance on the funding side, then you must have proof that you're providing a quality education from a distance learning standpoint. And we have a very, very, very well documented instructional program that's continuing to happen because of our infrastructure and because of the fact that the city of McAllen worked with us to provide hotspots to many areas of the city that we didn't have before. We worked in conjunction. So that's enabled a lot of families to have connectivity. But more than that, it's really allowed us to continue to maneuver. And all of our meetings from a district standpoint have continued to rock and roll, just like we're doing right now. I meet with staff members, with principals, executive leadership team, board members. Our board meetings are carried through virtual, just like we are right now. And because of our infrastructure on the technology side, we've been able to be nimble and quick in that area. So I'm very, very proud of that. It's a time in McAllen, Texas, and McAllen ISD where we're able to flex our muscle with regard to the resiliency and the grit that we bring to the table when we're challenged with the problem. And we're very good at finding solutions. And I mean, never in my wildest dreams did I think that I'd be part of a team that's leading a school district through a world pandemic. But to be part of a team that's not only leading a school district through a world pandemic, but that's flourishing in this environment, that's learning every day on how to do this better, because we don't know what the future holds. But one thing we know for sure is that McAllen ISD is continuing to provide quality, and that's what we focus on. I know Steve mentioned that we're big on customer service, and we are. We want to make sure that we provide a great experience, not only for children, but for their families. And we're not perfect. I don't think any system is perfect, but we're pretty darn good when it comes to working in this environment. And I was disappointed that the commissioner canceled the state assessment, the STAR test and end of course, because all indications and all benchmark results that were coming through for us as we got closer to testing season, all the data was showing strong that we were going to earn our third A in a row. And I'm confident that we were. We scored 93.4 as a district the year before. We were on pace to beat that. I mean, the good news is we hold our A as we move into this year and the next year. We hold our A. So our status there is important to us, because as Steve mentioned, you know, when families are looking for a place to go, they want to send their children to a quality education program, and they look at that. At this point, I'd like to share a short video with you all. And then on the back end of that video, I'll answer any questions that you might have. And this video exemplifies some of the cool things that are going on in McAllen ISD. So I'll have Julian play this for us.
Led to school closures across the nation. McAllen ISD rose to this challenge by swiftly transitioning toward distance learning for more than 22,000 students in all grade levels. The result has been phenomenal. Student learning has continued without interruption. Not a single day has been missed.
Are you excited for a read aloud? Yes.
It's actually going a lot better than I expected, to be honest. We're using Zoom and Google Classroom to communicate with our teachers, and they're doing pretty well. We were able to like ask questions like live. It's almost as if like we're still in the classroom.
The district has a proud tradition embracing technology. Students have had their own electronic learning devices since 2011. In fact, McAllen ISD's preparedness has caught the attention of national experts.
I would say that the schools that are getting it right now have already been preparing their teachers. They've had training over the summer, which I know you guys have done religiously over the last several years in terms of bringing teachers in and saying, here are the tools you can use to enhance your classroom and blend the actual learning. Well, this moment happens in time, and all of a sudden that switch has to be turned on. Some teachers had those skills pre-built, and a lot of that you guys have already done with them. And the districts that are doing it well, I would say, have already had those practices in place for several years.
One principal sees a silver lining in that students and staff are picking up valuable new skills.
They can definitely use those tools when they go off to college. So, we like being ahead of the game in McAllen ISD and being, ahead of the curve. So being able to go to trainings, in the summertime, taking our teachers to summer trainings has really, really paid off and benefited our campus as a whole and our district as a whole.
With social distancing in place, officials found a unique and heartfelt way to surprise the district elementary and secondary teachers of the year. Surprises were also in store for the high school valedictorians and salutatorians. Thanks to new parameters established by the state, McAllen ISD can hold graduation ceremonies for more than 1,600 seniors in a way that is safe and festive. The ceremonies will be held June 8th through 11th at DQ Fan Field at McAllen Veterans Memorial Stadium.
I hope that that video gave you a visual representation and really a story of some of the cool things that are going on in the district. I do want to, are we out? Can you all hear me right now?
We can.
Okay. I do want to once again commend everybody that took part. That's just part of the story. And that was just us trying to go the extra mile for our teachers of the year, going the extra mile for all the students and their families. I'm about to meet with the top 10 seniors through a Zoom and have a conversation, the top 10 numbers 1 through 10 for every high school. You can see the stacks of books back here behind me. I'm writing all of our students personal letters of how proud I am, and then we'll have an opportunity to talk. And this is a tradition we've had for 4 years now. So I'm looking forward to that meeting. We've had also a video cast that we call the Super Talk, and we've had opportunities to talk to many individuals across the community. And it's an exciting time for us, ironically, because we're able to really test the system and see what McAllen ISD is all about. And I think that we've shown that we can flourish in this environment. So at this time, I'll open it up to any questions you might have.
So what we'd like to do as far as questions, if you want to go ahead and submit your questions on chat, I'll read those to Jay as we move forward. That way we won't have people talking over each other. I've got our first question, and it relates to contingency planning. And obviously, you know, having never gone through a pandemic before and moving forward, and obviously there may be things that change over the next 6 months. As you look at your scenarios to returning to school, is the school district looking at how other countries are returning to schools to school? Are you talking and having conversation with public health official, and obviously the Texas Education Agency, and then teachers and parents in the community? So Jay, talk a little bit about kind of what goes into the mix as you're looking forward and moving forward, and kind of what would be some of those moments where you say, okay, we're going to have to step back and rethink what we're doing.
As far as communicating and collaborating, all of the above, you know, really working closely and looking at the CDC, working closely with the Hidalgo Health Department, County Health Department, in close contact with the Commissioner of Education, on weekly chats with Region 1 superintendents, working closely just with city officials. So everybody kind of in the same situation, you know, even with the chamber and the MEDC, and trying to see how we're going to maneuver as we move forward. As far as contingency plans, absolutely. Right now we're in stage 3 of our COVID emergency action plan, and stage 3 keeps kids home. Stage 3 keeps teachers home. Stage 3 keeps administrators, pretty much everybody home, with the exception of some essential employees that I mentioned earlier: food service, transportation, police department, some of the nurses, and that's where we're at in stage 3. Before we went into stage 3, we were in stage 2, and this is what we're talking about, contingency, or how we'd work back into the future. If we ever got to the point back into the deeper into the future where it was time to start working our way back in, the plan would be to go from stage 3 to stage 2. And in stage 2, what that does is it brings employees back into the environment. But in that stage, it also looks at employees that have high risk factors. So we'd look at a certain threshold on age and give people choice if they were above a certain age, or if they had a pre-existing condition that could put them at risk. We'd work with employees on a one-to-one, and then give them options to do some distance work like they're doing now. And then we do the same thing for students. In stage 2, we give parents choice. So whether you want to bring your kid back into the comprehensive environment in the traditional setting, or whether you want to keep your kid in the distance learning environment. And at this point, the commissioner is saying that he would continue to give us funding for ADA. So that's good for us. So that's the plan working forward before we ever got back to normal, where it's game on and everybody's back in the building and all kids are back in the building, and school, it was like it was in the world that we lived before COVID-19 hit. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Okay. So another question is the digital divide. And obviously, I think, with the distance learning and the technology that's involved, I think it has become very apparent to communities where there's a digital divide. What do you see moving forward in terms of being able to address that, as far as, closing that gap, and then also making it more available throughout the community?
At this point, the major challenge that we have is connectivity. As far as a device, our children have devices, which is good. And there's a lot that they have on the hard drive component of the device that allows them to use it with certain apps. But connectivity is the bigger issue. So continuing to work with the city, continuing to work with the county, looking deeper at potential funds moving forward through this COVID-19 situation that we could utilize to provide connectivity to families across the system. Fortunately for us, as I mentioned, there's not very many one-to-one school districts in the state of our size. And there's definitely not, of those one-to-one school districts that each kid has a device, I think we're using it at a much more proficient level. So that's just through trial and error over many years that we're able to put ourselves in that position. So when we had to put that switch on, we were able to do that. So guess in a nutshell, is just really working as a team for connectivity and getting parents connected. The good thing is that the vast majority of our students or their parents have cell phones, and they have connection through their service provider. So we've been able to get around some of the obstacles with that.
Okay. So obviously enrollment continues to play an important role for any school district in Texas. And one of the questions we had is, have you seen a drop in enrollment in terms of kids switching from the distance learning that the school district is doing to a homeschooling or possibly other charter schools?
But at this point, as you mentioned, our district has been seeing a decline in enrollment for many different factors. I mean, if you look at McAllen, Texas being approximately 50 square miles, so we're landlocked, that's one. And it's more difficult for starter families to purchase homes in our city. We have an aging population. We have declining birth rates. We have new charters and more choices for our students. So those are some of the reasons that we are losing students. We put a student outreach, community outreach department together this last year. So we've been able to reduce some of the decline in enrollment, but we still see that. I think that our goal is to continue being successful because everybody wants to be part of a winning team. I think what's saving us right now around the part of the question that talks about homeschooling is that the commissioner is allowing us to get ADA, our funding, even though students are staying home. So at this point, we're able to continue maneuvering that way. But what I am hearing is some parents are saying, you know, I'm not going to send my child back to school until there's a vaccine. That's some of the things that I'm hearing right now. So I could see that being a problem in the future. But if the commissioner allows us, and I think he will, to continue receiving ADA in this environment, then it shouldn't hit us too hard. But just, you know, like any other business, we adjust to the declining enrollment. You know, just this last year, going into this next school year, we're 22 teachers lighter, and amongst other positions that we had to not fill. So we're trying to keep the trajectory in line with staffing. As our enrollment declines, we're trying to follow that same pattern with staffing, and we're doing a good job with that.
Jay, would you envision in the future possibly a split system where if parents are saying, I don't feel comfortable that my kids might be exposed to the COVID-19, that you'd have in-classroom experiences, but then also online classroom experience?
I do, Steve. I think that would definitely be a possibility. I guess the caveat there and the $1 million question is, how far down the road or into the future will TEA allow us to continue earning funding for children that are being homeschooled or doing the distance learning? And that's why it's so important to us as a district right now to fine tune our systems, to document our instruction, to monitor our instruction, to make sure that there's a big focus on literacy and mathematics and science and social studies, and then try to work the arts into it along with physical activity. And we're doing a good job. We have a lot of room to improve like every other school district, but I do see that being a potential moving into the future.
I have a question about mentoring. Obviously with the Zoom, Zoom and the telelearning that's going on right now, mentoring is that something that the school district is exploring, is about the possibilities of allowing telelearning with mentoring?
Are you saying mentoring for staff members or mentoring?
Or mentoring for students?
For students, yeah, we still have our counseling programs running. So, for instance, just day before yesterday, my little one, I have a kindergarten student, I have a first grade student, and I have a second grade student, but my kindergarten student's counselor reached out to him, and they had a little session together and had a discussion on emotional intelligence and looked at self-awareness and self-regulation, motivation, empathy, social skills, and really just honed in on that. So we still have counselors reaching out. We still have services being provided through the counseling department. We still have mentorship programs running for students. Could we get better at that? Absolutely. So that's something that would be more virtual in nature, because in the traditional setting, we have group counseling sessions where you have groups of students that are all dealing with the same situation. And maybe students.
Jay, I think the question is, if someone wanted to volunteer to do mentoring through through the virtual process, you know, as a layperson, not necessarily an educator, but as a layperson to have opportunities to mentor students virtually?
Yeah, we'd have to look at that deeper. We want to make sure that, yeah, we hadn't considered that one. We're open to any possibility right now, but obviously everybody would have to be vetted, looking at credentials and looking at backgrounds and things of that sort. But that's something that we would definitely welcome.
Another question is, obviously there's, you know, originally when COVID-19 started, there was a thought that it would not impact kids, that kids their immune systems were a little bit sturdier and were not coming down with it. Now in the last week, we've seen this pediatric multi-system inflammatory syndrome happening. Obviously in New York is kind of leading the way. Have you started thinking about how you're going to address that concern with parents as we move forward?
Well, the big thing is just from a sanitary standpoint, we use an antimicrobial agent. So we'll continue using that as far as cleanliness and hand washing stations. And when we do go back to a physical environment, you know, it's going to be a whole different ballgame with regard to just making sure that parents understand that we're doing our very best in that particular area. As far as the impact on children, that's where the big push right now for the vaccine is coming. And this is where a lot of parents are saying, my child will stay in a virtual setting. My child will not go to any school, no charter school, no anything until there's a vaccine. That's why we're in a position right now to pivot to say, if that is your choice, then we offer a high quality choice at McAllen ISD with regard to distance learning. There's so many unknown variables, Steve. There's so many things right now that you know, the way we ran the district before is so much different, obviously, than we're running it now. And there's no benchmark to look at with regard to what people did in the past. So at this point, it's a day by day, and just trying our very best to gain the trust of the community as we get closer to coming back in the future, and we don't know when that is.
This is going to be a technical question, so hopefully I'll get it right. TEA has sent out guidance recently overhauling the approach to the school calendar. They're recommending an intersessional calendar. Given McAllen ISD district made the decision not to be a district of innovation, and that limits scheduling flexibility, do you think their district would go back and consider becoming a district of innovation? Or do you think moving forward, you can work through this new calendaring system?
Well, it's definitely a challenge when you don't have the flexibility of starting earlier and the competition does. I think that's a challenge, and that's definitely, you know, why we showed interest in the past in the District of Innovation. I think that has to be a discussion with our board and with the executive leadership team and with key leaders across the district, along with teachers and parents and students, and really just take another look at it. So if the state and the commissioner is not going to give us flexibility outside of a district of innovation, then that's something that we should definitely have a conversation about, and really just trying to utilize the components of flexibility on the calendar on the district of innovation is something that we were interested in from the onset. And that would be the same area of interest as we start to discuss it again moving into the future.
So for us lay people, can you give a definition of an intersessional calendar and what that means?
Well, we're supposed to start on the 24th in McAllen ISD, and we go 6 weeks. Like when we were in school, we go 6 weeks. We have 6 weeks in the first semester, and then 3 in the second semester with a Christmas break in between. The commissioner's given us different options with intersessions and changing that whole dynamic of 6 week periods, shorter blocks, splitting days, splitting times, morning sessions, afternoon sessions. Right now, it's just this big menu of possibilities that we could utilize, but it would essentially break up our 6 week traditional setting.
Is that something the school district is going to look at and consider for this coming school year, or are you still going to take the traditional approach?
We haven't had that conversation yet. I think that right now we're in a position to call audibles, and then we're in a position to pivot and make decisions, and those are things that we have to talk about. It's hard to predict the future and what this virus is going to do, but we definitely know that society is going to be different on the back end than it was when we got into it.
For those students, obviously every student learns differently, but for those students who fall behind, that may fall behind during this moment of virtual learning, and let's say you go back to in-person classroom teaching, how are you going to address or catch up those students that maybe have fallen behind in terms of the grade level, where they should be, some of the typical interventions that you might face with a student that has fallen behind going through all this the last 7-8 weeks?
Yeah, we're going to have to, if you look at Texas and the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, that's the state curriculum. What they do per grade level, they call them TEKS. So these TEKS are just indicators, they're objectives that students have to learn. So what we'll do is we'll look back at when the pandemic started, how much time we missed, what curriculum should have been taught, and then we can assess our students to find gaps. And then we're going to have to loop back around and reteach. We're going to have to loop back around and enrich. We're going to have to do a little bit more with before school, during school, after school to fill those gaps. So it's not any different than the system we had before with regard to our value-added progress monitoring system. And that's just a fancy way of saying we monitor every objective that we teach, and we take a good look at what students are getting it and which ones aren't. And what we do is if a student doesn't get an objective, whether it be cause and effect, or whether it be solids, liquids, and gases in science, or measurement in math, if they're not getting it, we have systems and processes to loop back around, regroup those kids, and reteach them. If they are getting it and they're proficient, we're looking at ways to enrich that experience to get them to understand it with greater depth and complexity. So it would be the same reteach and enrich system that we currently have, modified to be more stringent.
And I guess it would also depend on if those students needed in-person teaching or working with versus virtual, correct?
Yes.
Dr. Gonzalez, is there a particular country that you're looking at to model to see what they're doing that maybe is 2 or 3 months ahead of where we are in the United States as far as schools opening up? And what the, is there somebody that you're saying, okay, this is somebody we're watching, seeing how they handle what they're doing?
Not in particular. At this point, we're working very closely with our region, and we're looking at how it's impacting our region, although we are looking at school districts across the state. I know the Dallas Metroplex has a spike right now. So we're kind of working and looking, one of my mentors and is Rick Lopez over at Garland. So I communicate with him on a regular basis with regard to what they're doing in the Dallas area, because it's just, it's spiked up over there. Mike and Ojosa, superintendent out of Dallas. They're superintendents in that area that I communicate with. But as far as a country, we haven't looked too deep at what other countries are doing. We're taking our situation and we're putting it under a microscope and seeing, what we can do in our area to maneuver this. And there's just some big rocks that we know that social distancing and making sure that we use the proper sanitizing techniques and things of that sort have been the biggest factors in reducing the spread of the virus. But I think that one of the things that we know is that everybody's just on the edge of their seat waiting for a vaccine. And I believe that that's definitely in our future. We just don't know how far into it is. So, once that hits, we'll be a little bit better. But specifically looking at other countries to model at this point, I mean, we are looking at what's going on in Europe and in different parts of the world, but not to model.
So, you bring up the question on sanitizing, and obviously you see businesses now that are bringing in the evenings, they bring in these machines that vape, they have this, process of sanitizing the entire space, whether it's a workspace or an office space. Do you envision the school district moving to that type of daily sanitizing in the evenings when the students aren't there, as you move back to having in-person classrooms?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things is that as a district for the last couple of years, we've been proactive in that area, because before COVID-19 hit, we had the flu. We have the flu, right? So that's our biggest deal. And this year was one of our biggest outbreaks of the flu. So when you look at that, we use a product called Gold Shield. It's an antimicrobial agent that has a special devices that you do just that. It just sprays a mist all over the schools. And we use the gold shield on a schedule at every campus throughout the district. And then we increase the frequency of that antimicrobial agent at schools that had a spike in the flu. And Gold Shield does also kill the COVID-19 virus. So that's something that is kind of like our one-to-one initiative on technology. We were already working that. All we did was increase the frequency of use. Right now, the big thing is hand washing stations, because we know that that's better than hand sanitizer. So increasing the amount of hand washing stations that we have across our campuses would be our next level of work.
So would you anticipate using Gold Shield on a daily basis in the classrooms moving forward?
I would anticipate, I don't know if we would go on a daily basis, because the product does work over a number of days, but we would definitely use it at the frequency that the professionals say that we need to use it at to keep our building sanitized.
So obviously what we're going through is a huge disruption, and has been a disruptor. Businesses, and I'm going to speak from the business standpoint, there are businesses that are now positioning themselves to take advantage of this. And as you look through this COVID-19 experience, are there, what key innovations or key things moving forward that you think that maybe in the past you've had philosophical conversations about, but now you're saying, okay, this is an opportunity for us to invest and innovate and do things differently than what we've done before?
One would be what we're doing now. I think that even when we get back into the traditional setting, there's going to be a lot more of what we used to do in gathering groups of people. There'll be a lot more Teams or Zoom meetings. So we're getting very proficient in being productive in these types of meetings, setting the norms, much like you did on the questions. Instead of people firing at me, put them into the chat, and in a very organized way of being productive in meetings like this, being efficient. The Google Classroom, that is a virtual classroom where students submit work and gather work. Some teachers were using the Google Classroom at a frequency that was at a high level, and some were not. And so you could see that the entire use of the Google Classroom across our entire system has grown exponentially. So I can see that would be another platform that's definitely going to change the way that teachers are using technology, the way that parents are using technology. I think that the way that parents are involved in their child's education is going to continue. And that's something that we're going to continue to work on in ensuring that it's always been a team approach, even when we were in school. But this is a whole different level of team approach. So I think that getting parents involved on the education side of the child and really taking a deeper dive on what objectives they need help with, and providing their children with experiences that can help them understand that, would be something that would definitely be innovative and creative, and just really just the next frontier of technology and what it's going to allow us to do as we move forward. And hiring teachers that can maneuver. And right now we have a good crop of teachers that are kind of hybrid with regard to being able to deliver like we are now, or being able to deliver in person, just being very comfortable in both environments and having passion for both environments. So really the mindset of what we're looking for in a teacher and their skill sets, and in leaders in their skill sets, is something that's going to be different moving into the future.
And Jay, I always kid you, because I always tell you the U.S. education system is built on a 19th century business model, and we enter into the 21st century. So obviously this may bring about that change that everyone keeps saying. We have all this technology, we have all this AI, we have a lot of different things that we can use now. Why are we still teaching like it's the 19th century? So it may force education to change how it does, or how it looks at doing things. So the next question we have is regarding special needs students, recognizing that there's the challenges that there's things that they can do with special needs students in person versus working with special needs students that are doing it virtually. Tell us how the school district is moving forward with that, since it appears to be no waivers in terms of complying with what you need to do with special needs students.
Yeah, this is where we're very, very grateful to our parents, because our parents have been doing an exceptional job in working with teachers to execute the IEP. That's the individual education plan. Every child with special needs has an IEP. That IEP is developed by a committee that we call the ARD committee. That's the Admission Review and Dismissal Committee. And that committee works together to look at the child's needs to develop this individual education plan. The trick is to make sure that when they get into the classroom, that IEP or individual education plan is being executed with fidelity. The challenge in this environment is that IEP is having to be executed through a teacher into the home with the parent back to the teacher. So at this point, it's very challenging for parents in general with regard to what we're asking them to do. But hats off to the parents out there that are working very hard to execute their child's IEP, and they continue working very closely with our special education staff to ensure that we're doing all that we can in this environment to provide the services, because as you mentioned, there's no waivers in this environment. So they have a right to FAPE. That's free and appropriate public education. That's federal law. So we're doing our very best to provide that free and appropriate public education. Right now, the least restrictive environment, they call that LRE. The least restrictive environment is the household. So it's it's a massive team effort right now. And we're very grateful that we're able to do that. We have a tremendous director of special education. We have outstanding special education teachers and phenomenal parents and students. And it's just a big team. That's really one big test that we're facing right now. And we're doing well. I mean, we could always get better, just like every other area, but we're proud of what we're doing with our special population at this point.
So obviously this is Texas. Football season is 3 or 4 months away. How do you envision football games, sporting events in the fall? And I know obviously you and I have talked about this, but kind of deferring TEA moving forward. But if you had your, if you were going to scenario plan, how would you envision football games at the football stadium this fall?
Yeah, well, there'd obviously have to be testing for every athlete, before they're allowed to compete. There'd have to be much higher levels of sanitary practices with regard to the kids, and at this point there's not hand washing stations on football sidelines or hand sanitizers on football sidelines, but that's something. I know that if you look at our stadium, fortunately we have a larger stadium, so we definitely do testing for fans that are coming in, and then also have the stadium set up for social distancing where people sat in pods, where you'd have 6 feet to the left, 6 feet to the right, above and below, so that we can make sure and do that. And in big games, we get to playoffs and things of that sort, where you're putting 12, 13, 14,000 people in the stadium. We may have to control ticket sales on that and reduce the number of people coming through. So those are some of the things that come to mind just off the cuff.
So I'm sure you've had parents reaching out to you and saying, I'm ready for my kids to go back to school.
Yeah, my wife's one of them.
I mean, obviously, when I was talking with businesses, they talk about the fact that they're staying home because their kids are staying home, and that the only way that they can go back to work is that their kids can go back to school. And so are you hearing complaints, concerns about, hey, when are you reopening again? When are you going to start where I can send my kids back to school? I've got to get back to work also.
Steve, I would have thought if you would have asked me going into this that my phone would have been blowing up with that question, and my phone is blowing up. But surprisingly, our community has really come together on this one and been extremely understanding with us as a school system. So I haven't had a lot of parents say that at this point. That's why we'd like to, in the near future, whenever it's safe to do, move into stage 2, where we give parents choice. And when we do that, we believe that maybe a 60-40 split, where 60% decide to send their kids to school and 40% decide to keep their kids, those that can. Like in my situation, I work full-time, obviously, but my wife is an educator. She's a teacher by trade, but she's a stay-at-home mom because our children are young right now. So in my household, we would be able to pull that off to continue to create a smaller environment. So if the community could come together in the future when it's time, and those that can and have the resources and just the circumstances at home to do that, would do that. And then those that can't, because they have to run businesses and do whatever they have to do, would send their kids to school to thin out the population. I think that would be something that would be beneficial as we cycle back into our traditional model.
I noticed on the video, and this is one of the questions, I noticed in the video you talked about the virtual, not virtual, but the graduation ceremonies that you're going to do in June. Could you just, recap for everybody kind of what you envision happening in June as far as graduation?
Yes, sir. On June 8th, we're going to have Achieve Early College High School in Lamar. It'll be later in the evening at 7:30. And going from there on June 8th. Those are two smaller crops of kids, so two smaller high schools. On June 9th at 7:30 at the stadium. This is not at the convention center. This is at the stadium, the old traditional way. We'd have McA at 7:30. On June 10th, we'd have Memorial High School. And on June 11th, we'd have Nicky Rowe High School. And we would be practicing social distancing. Every graduate's going to get 4 tickets. And those 4 tickets are going to be given to the graduate's choice. So if you have mom, dad, grandma, and grandpa, they'll have both sides of the stadium will be utilized. We'll have nurses that are going to be doing screenings for different points of entry for all of the family members that are coming in. We'll have the stadium taped off into pods of 4. So a family will be sitting there and they'll have 6 feet to their left, 6 feet to their right, below and above, so that they're practicing social distancing on both sides of the stadium. And then we'll have some precautionary measures for our board members and for diplomas and for our students, and social distancing with our seniors, and really modify what that looks like with regard to time and speeches and things of that sort, and choir singing. I think that we'll have more videos being played that are pre-recorded, and it'll be open air. So we believe that we'll be able to pull that off. At this point, that's the game plan. But should things change and we could pivot we can pivot quickly and go into another plan.
So obviously there's been unexpected expenses as we've gone through this. Some things that you already had in place.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously moving forward, increased sanitation, ways of reaching out and communicating, the digital divide. What's the financial situation for the school district? And is TEA talking about additional funding that can help deliver during this moment? And is it something that as taxpayers, we need to be concerned about moving forward?
Now, at this point, we have different entities on the federal and the state level that are saying document everything, every expenditure that's connected to COVID-19. So we're expecting reimbursement on that. The Commissioner of Education made it very clear to us to monitor and take account of line item by line item with regard to every expense that occurred because of COVID-19. We don't know how fast the turnaround would be with regard to the reimbursement, but all indications are pointing to we would be reimbursed for a large portion of our expenses. So I wouldn't think that the community has to worry about any ramifications of this from the school district side.
I want to pass on a compliment to you. We have one of the folks listening who said that their son is a special needs student at Kathy, and have felt the teachers have done an amazing job in terms of calling and reaching out and checking in and seeing how he's doing. So it's always good to get the compliments, isn't it?
Well, let me tell you, Steve, that one right there that made my day, just for somebody out there on this chat to just reinforce and justify the work that our staff is doing. It means a lot to me. So whoever made that comment, from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the district and our board, thank you for acknowledging that effort, and we'll continue to work hard for you.
So we've talked about, the students, we've talked about the families. Now, obviously the teachers and the staff, everybody has different emotions going through a pandemic. As you move forward, obviously there's issues as far as people want, do they feel comfortable coming back to work, and talk a little bit about some of those challenges, how you're addressing some of the, the mental health needs of the staff and faculty, and what you envision happening over the next 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, that's spot on with regard to, you already have when you look at mental health, there's people that deal with anxiety, there's people that deal with depression, post-traumatic stress disorders, you name it. There's just a long list of it. And all a pandemic does in a situation like this is compound those feelings of helplessness. So we still have our employee assistance program that's helping employees through this. Some of our employees, fortunately, are still employed, and which is good for them, but their spouse is in another industry, so they're feeling the financial burdens of the COVID-19. So we're providing counseling to staff, we're providing counseling to students, because anytime adults in a household start to experience more stress, then it stresses the entire household environment, as we know. So our counselors continue to work with children that need that. As far as just overall mental health, our district has the family treatment program that is still up and running. And we have great relationships with entities from across the city that provide mental health services. And we've done a great job in formulating MOUs with almost every mental health institution in our community to provide pathways for not only staff members, but students and their families to continue getting the help that they need beyond what we can help. So if we run into cases that are more severe, then we may refer that parent to Texas Tropical Behavior Center or Doctors Renaissance, and then the list goes on to PADAP. There's just so many different organizations that we're working hand in hand with. I would say that our mental health program, with regard to our family treatment program, is second to none.
Are you anticipating that there's going to be a bump in anxiety and depression and some of the typical things that everybody's experiencing during this COVID-19?
Yeah, I think so. I think the good news for our region, just the people that we are, is I believe we just have grit built into us. We're resilient by nature. Unfortunately, you know, that there still are some individuals that deal with stress differently. So I would anticipate a definite spike, but we have great organizations down here and a lot of support. So I believe, you know, if there's anybody out there that's tied to the district that has a child or is experiencing mental health issues, I welcome you to reach out to the district, reach out to our family treatment program, and we can help. Great.
Sally, I think we've come to close to our hour. I'll have any final comments, and Dr. Gonzalez, thank you so much.
Yes, well, thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. That was great information. Thank you for taking time. I know you have a lot going on right now, but it was, and we had a great group of participants today, so thank you.
You're very welcome. God bless you all. You all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Jay.
Stay safe. Bye.